Hey everybody, this is Mr. View, and today we're going to go on from World War II. Kind of. We are going to talk about the after effects of World War II, which we kind of touched on, but I want to go into a little bit more detail before we move on, right? So after World War II, this humongous war with all these colorful characters. You got Hitler, you got Mussolini, you got Stalin, you've got FDR, you've got Truman who drops a bomb. You got all this cast of characters, Winston Churchill. And now the world is kind of slowing down a little bit in the after effects of the war, right? With all of these dead people, right? 75 million people dead worldwide. Now put that into comparison with World War One, who 8.5 million died, right? Here you've got 75 million dead worldwide, and a lot of those are civilians. In the Soviet Union, Russia, they took the brunt of it. 22 million people died, including 15 million civilians from Russia and the Soviet Union. So Germany had 8 million die. That's kind of surprising that they didn't have nearly as much as the Soviet Union. The United States, we only lost 300,000 men only. But that's a lot of soldiers to lose, especially if they're all men and they're not coming back to their families. So huge losses, even for the United States, at 300,000, not comparable to Germany's 8 million and Soviet Union's 22 million, however. The Holocaust, right? We've talked a lot about the Holocaust. You guys have talked about that probably since fourth grade. And the 6 million Jews that were killed throughout Germany and Poland and Europe in general. But the concentration camps themselves were not limited to just the Jewish population. The last time we talked, I was talking about the Holocaust video, right? And that video was crazy good. I hope that you watched it. I know that some of you only watched the beginning because those were the only comments in your summary. However, if you watch the whole thing with the young girl, the 4-year-old girl with the apple, that she got shot by the prison guards, or the American POW who watched a guy get his arm ran through a bandsaw in the camp, and the guy tried to put it back on. And then later he talked about how they staked a guy out and the cannibals ate him in the camp. There were some horrific stories that were hard to get away from, right? So it wasn't just that the Jewish population was decimated in these concentration camps. There were other 5 million other people that were killed in these concentration camps too. The war trials happened right after World War II, and they were trying to get to the bottom of this whole Nazi mess and the concentration camps and everything. So they had the Nuremberg trials. Remember, prior to World War II, we had the Nuremberg laws in Germany that said Jews could not marry non-Jews and couldn't hold certain jobs, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now you have the Nuremberg trials, and they threw all the Nazis on trial, found them guilty, and a lot of them were put to death or in prison. That led to a hunting of the Nazis. A lot of the Nazis saw the writing on the wall and that they couldn't win the war, so they got out of Dodge. And they went throughout not only Europe or Asia, but South America and the United States. So they hid out. The higher ups seemed to congregate a lot in South America and in Brazil. But these Nazis were hunted. And believe it or not, they're still being hunted, right? The United States, 2 months ago, we deported a guy to Germany. He was a Nazi guard and he has to stand trial. He's 95 years old. But we found him in Tennessee. He was sent back over to Germany to stand trial for some atrocities during those concentration camp days. The war trials also made it illegal, or a horrible thing for this genocide, illegal for genocide. So no matter if you're in a war or not, you can't try to erase an entire race or ethnicity of people. So genocide is crime. And that's not the last time we're going to see genocide in my world history class. Yes, there was genocide there, but man, there's still a lot of genocide going out right now in the world, believe it or not. They're saying it's happening in China as we speak. So we're going to get into that a little bit more. The United Nations was formed. It's very similar to the League of Nations, right? The League of Nations that was formed after World War One, that was supposed to keep the peace forever, right? Well, the United Nations has a lot more bite than just bark. So it's way better than the League of Nations. Number one, the United States joined it. Right? The United States did not join the League of Nations. They wanted to stay out of those conflicts. This is the one we joined. There is a 5-member Security Council here with 5 major countries: the US, the Soviet Union, China, England, and France serving as the Security Council. The other countries all have a vote, however, in what happens in the world and in the United Nations. So we're going to touch on that a lot more later too. The Cold War that you know about from Mr. Taluki's class, we probably didn't learn much from that dude. With the democracies of the world versus the communist countries of the world. The communist countries were led by the Soviet Union, but they had a lot of satellite countries, right? The satellite countries believed just like the mother country or the big country in charge. The U.S. was kind of in charge of the democratic countries, but also a lot of the Western Europe, France and England, and so on. Europe was divided into the East and West. The East side, closest to the Soviet Union, closest to Russia, they were communist. The other side, the West side, that was more democratic. Okay, so this Cold War, this tensions between democracies and communism, we know that happened and it was a bad thing. There's also a huge arm race between the communist and democratic countries, right? We saw the Soviet Union, and if they said that they had X amount of tanks, we wanted more. If we said we had this amount of atomic weapons, they wanted more. And this arms race got really, really out of control. And some say still really out of control today, with people building up their militaries. Like, you don't need to blow up the world 100 million times, guys. Once will suffice. So there's an arms race. Propaganda was used on both sides. We know that propaganda is used to further a cause or hurt another cause, and we definitely did that in the United States. We used propaganda against communists all the time, and they, in their countries, used propaganda against democracies. So this propaganda fueled the fire and the hatred for communism if you were in the United States, and democracies if you were in the Soviet Union. So that's it for today. A lot of after effects of World War II, including 75 million dead, the Holocaust, the war trials, the Nuremberg war trials, the United Nations being formed, the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States, an arms race, and propaganda. Do the assignment, suckers. I'll talk to you later.